Hello and welcome to a quick explanation of the source video render video settings. I will not explain how to record a video with it, as there are so many tutorials on it by now and the process has become quite easy over the years. However, I've not seen any of these tutorials really explain what these settings mean. It's always just do as I say without explaining why. And I think that led a lot of people not using the settings that may be the best for them. Right away I want to say there is no best settings for everybody, one fits all solution. It really comes down to what you want to do and what compromises you are ready to accept. The explanation will go a little bit into the technical aspects of videos, so if you just want good settings, skip ahead to this timestamp near the end where I summarize and show some setting recommendations. Okay, let's get into it. Oh yeah, in order to keep the work time on this reasonable, as it only comes on the second channel, this video will not feature all the fancy motion graphics like I do on the main channel. Alright, now let's agree we all start with gameplay in a source game and want a video that gets uploaded to YouTube at the end of the workflow. I don't think, at least I'm not aware of too many cinemas or TV broadcasters that show too much surf content, unfortunately. That it is uploaded to YouTube is quite important, because YouTube re-encodes the videos again and has its process optimized for the most common video specs. A video in the H.264 codec, 8-bit color depth, 420 Chroma subsampling. If these things don't say anything to you, that's perfectly fine, they will at the end of the explanation. Except the 8-bit color depth, SVR does not render in anything else, it will only be 8-bit colors. Okay, now we have these 2 points defined, the start point, gameplay in a source video game, the end point, the video with these specific specifications getting uploaded to YouTube. What do you do between these 2 steps is the answer to the first and most important question in the settings, the choice of the encoder. SVR comes with 2 of them, libx264 and DNxHR. The first produces a video in the H.264 codec, the other, well, in the DNxHR codec. As I said, both will render in 8-bit color depth. libx264 will result in 420 subsampling, DNxHR in 4:2. As you can see, the libx264 produces a video exactly like you would want to upload directly to YouTube. And that's why Crashfort, the programmer behind SVR, recommends it for this exact use case. If you don't want to edit your footage in any meaningful capacity, libx264 is pretty much ready for delivery right out of the gate. Also, if the capacity of editing is just cut start and end of the clip and maybe increase some brightness and contrast, libx264 is, I can tell you right away, the right choice. If you want to do some more editing, DNxHR is the right choice. But why? It's about how these 2 encoders compress the frames into a video file. So a video at its core is just a bunch of images played back very quickly. In a gaming scene, and especially in fast-paced gameplay like source movement, it's 60 frames every second. Now the difference lays in how these frames are stored. You can save every single frame in full, which is called intra-frame compression, and that is exactly what we have in DNxHR. On the other side, libx264 uses inter-frame compression. Here the encoder takes a frame, a so-called keyframe, and saves it as full, and then checks the next frames only for the differences. These differences are then saved instead of the full image. You can imagine it as how old cartoons were made. Like the first couple of seasons of SpongeBob, when everything had to be still hand-drawn. The background of a scene wouldn't change, so there's no need to redraw it every single frame. In these cartoons you can quite clearly see the differences between the objects that change or are about to change and the steady background. In video, interframe compression follows the same logic, just the differences from changing and unchanging objects is not clearly visible. The benefit is very obvious. The interframe compressed video is much smaller in file size than an intra-frame compressed one. The benefit of intra-frame compression and the huge files are in editing softwares. When scrubbing through your timeline or replaying your clip, the video editing software needs to recreate the image at the desired frame. With H.264 that does not always happen instantly. And if you start to add effects of any kind, the software needs to recreate the image first and then apply all the effects on top of it, resulting in terrible scrubbing and playback performance. That is why intra-frame compression codecs, with the full frames, like DNxHR, are very popular in editing heavy workflows, But don't forget, at the end, the final product gets re-encoded again into an interframe compressed codec, because the efficiency and ease of handling of the files are now much more important than being editing friendly when the product is already finished. That means if you plan on editing much, add effects, work on a compilation with nice transitions, or anything involving spending some time in the editing software, DNxHR is the way to go. DNxHR settings in SVR are very straightforward. There is just one, the profile, which acts as a bitrate target preset. Bitrate just means how much data is allocated for every second of the video footage and is a crucial parameter of quality. We can choose between LB or low bitrate, SQ standard quality, and HQ high quality. Forget about standard quality, that's not useful to anyone really. Low bitrate could be interesting for quick tests or if you work with proxies in editing, but for most people and their actual renders, definitely not the right choice. Just leave it at high quality. But remember, even short clips will be huge in file size. And that's it. All the other settings have no impact on the DNxHR encoder. On the libx264 side, things are a bit more complicated. There is the CRF and the preset setting. Let's look at CRF, or constant rate factor, first. You can choose in between a range from 0 to 51, and it comes down to a simple trade-off: image quality versus file size and encoding time. It basically says how much information per frame is supposed to be dropped. The more information is kept, the better the image quality, but also the bigger the resulting file. In general, 17 to 20 is considered a good balance for most cases. I would say here you might want to go a little bit lower than that. However, a higher value will start to deteriorate your image noticeably up to the point where it is completely unusable. In the lower direction, you are free to try out values and see if you can spot any difference even, but under 15 or so it's very unlikely. You will most likely just increase encoding time and file size for effectively the same result. But this really is the setting where you can experiment a little bit. Everything between 1 and 20 should be fine really. Next up is the so-called preset that can range from ultra fast to placebo. It's another trade-off, this time between encoding time versus file size and a little bit of quality. It basically says how much time to spend after recording on compressing the video. The more time the encoder has, the more efficient the compression is, meaning a smaller file size and a bit better image quality. If you look at this graph, where the red dot is the perceived quality and blue is the encoding time, we see minuscule differences in quality from very fast onwards, but a noticeable increase in encoding time from medium onwards. As you can make a plausible use case for each and every preset, the one that does not make sense ever is placebo. You could think it's the slowest, that means better compression and better quality, and so this has to be the best, but this is literally not true. Not in the sense of what you get in the trade-off mindset, it's not a good deal. No, it is actually, mathematically speaking, shit. Because very slow is already as good as possible. Placebo can only be as good or worse, but with double the already insanely long processing time compared to very slow. It has literally zero use cases. None. The next one is very slow, which is, well, very slow, it really is, and you have to decide how much patience you have and how strong your computer is, which, by the way, is completely depending on the CPU. There's no GPU acceleration here. The differences in image quality are really negligible for the most part, especially if you use motion blur, as that blurs some details anyway. That's a good general point to remember. Don't lose sleep over the smallest of quality improvements. Motion blur is gonna blur a lot of stuff. To conclude preset, something between faster and slower will work just well, depending on your CPU and how long you want to wait after recording. Last option is All-intra, which, as the description says, records in only keyframes. If we remember the differences in compression from earlier, DNxHR records every frame in full. It records every frame in a keyframe. libx264 does not. Well, with this setting turned on, it does. It then turns into H.264 All-intra, because now it uses intra-frame compression as well. It comes with the exact same pros and cons as the choice between normal H.264 and DNxHR from earlier. Editing software is probably still like DNxHR a little bit better though, as it's really designed for it from the beginning. I would say if you want to record in an intra-frame compression, you might as well use DNxHR. I don't really see the point in H.264 All-intra here. Now that's it with the settings, except it isn't. There's one more option, another encoder option. It's not a different encoder, but it's a different profile within the libx264 encoder. It is called libx264-444. The first part we are already familiar with, and all variables work the exact same way, but what's the deal with the 444s? Well, we are talking color information here. 444 refers to the Chroma subsampling and basically tells us the compression ratio for color information, or in this case, the lack of compression of color information. Do not make this too complicated because most people won't care for it anyway. 444 has no color compression. 422 keeps 50% of color information, that's what DNxHR uses, and 420 keeps only 25%. So it really seems like a no-brainer then to go with 444 because you have so much more color information. But remember what I said at the beginning, the final video will be H.264-420 regardless of what happens on the way there. That means if you can put this information to good use, it's worth rendering it out, which will result in bigger files. If you don't put it to use, then why bother? Work that would benefit from uncompressed color information is very elaborate color grading, keying, or LUT matching. If you don't plan to do any of these things, you do not really benefit of rendering in libx264-444. And increasing exposure and some contrast and maybe pushing shadows a bit does not count as elaborated color grading. The normal profile of libx264 will work just fine there. And that's it, now for real. Motion blur and velocity overlay are very subjective. I will not talk about it, do as you please, but don't forget that motion blur will increase your recording time. And now to summarize, if your editing workflow does not exceed cutting off start and end of the clip, and your work with color does not get further than very basic grading, libx264 with a CRF of 10 to 15 and any of these presets will work great. There is some room for experiments with both the constant rate factor and the preset. However, 0 and everything over 20 for the CRF is not recommendable. The ultra fast preset only if your PC is terribly slow, and don't under no circumstances use the placebo preset. If you plan to spend some time with the clip inside an editing software with a lot of scrubbing and playback, go with DNxHR at the high quality profile. The files will be huge, but every second spent in the editor will make it worth more. And finally, just for the sake of completion that can surely be ignored by close to 100% of people, but technically is the set of settings that holds the most information. libx264 with the 444 Chroma subsampling profile, a constant rate factor of 0 which results in lossless compression, a very slow preset, and on top of that, let's turn on only keyframes to have the benefits of an all-intra compression. I mean, having the benefit when it eventually will be done processing. To bring this to an end, a quick note on resolution. Obviously, native 4K is the best option, but 1440p is decent as well. If you record in 1080p, you got a problem. Because YouTube uses two different codecs, it re-encodes every upload in. The older one that is used for videos 1080p and lower is, to say it nicely, absolute dog shit. It will wreck your image quality, your bitrate, and is especially bad with dark areas. So always upscale the video to at least 1440p, even if it's really just increasing the image size without some fancy upscaling technique. It will still make a world difference. Okay, that's it for me. Have a good one. Bye.